We are now in the month of December and most of the 2025 NFL regular season has been played, and in today's video we are going to be going back and discussing the best and worst drafts from the 2025 NFL draft so far. And for clarity within this video, we will be breaking this down largely based off of the expectations for each player and team entering the 2025 NFL season. And given that we are nearly a year into these guys' careers, that does not mean if your first round pick is looking like a draft bust that the entire class was bad. There are 7 rounds of the NFL draft for a reason, and we will discuss the game plan each team had in the draft and how that is or is not working out for them so far. And if you could like the video before we start, a football will appear when you do, and also helps tremendously with the YouTube algorithm. And with those prefaces out of the way, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with a team that has not been discussed in a positive light too often over the last few years, and it's the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns initially had the number 2 overall pick in the 2025 draft, then traded back 3 spots with the Jags to acquire an additional 2nd and 4th round pick in 2025, as well as a 2026 first. Now, Cleveland also sent a 2025 4 and a 6, but the big part of the trade was of course the 2 and next year's 1. And it's one thing to acquire draft capital and to have ammo to move up and down the board as you please, but what you have to remember is you still have to hit on the picks. And nearly 8 months later, the Browns undoubtedly hit on several picks in the 2025 draft. Now, with the Browns defense, not just this year, but well, really every year since 2017, you immediately think of Myles Garrett, and rightfully so. But Mason Graham has started to come along as an interior rusher, and very quietly, he's 3rd in the 2025 draft class in pressures with 29 in the year, and 1st among all rookie interior defensive linemen. Naturally, as an interior defensive lineman, the statistical impact is going to be limited, but Graham has been playing at a high level for a little over a month now, and he is a good piece along this defensive line. Now, Cleveland had 2 second-round picks in linebacker Carson Swessinger and running back Quinshon Judkins, and there's a reason that Carson Swessinger is the overwhelming favorite to win the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. He's instinctual, he does a great job in run defense, and I think that at times it's underappreciated because the AFC North is a tough and gritty division, and you need to be able to stop the run in this division, especially late in December when football matters most. And like we said with Mason Graham, Myles Garrett is who gets the most attention on this defense, but Swessinger has shown flashes of a future All-Pro throughout his rookie year, and that's not an exaggeration. And if he stays healthy, Cleveland has a high-quality starter for the next 5+ years. They also selected running back Quinshon Judkins in the 2nd round with a pick they acquired from the aforementioned Jags trade, and at the time of this video release, Judkins is leading rookies in both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, and not only that, but per PFF, he's also 9th in average yards after contact per carry, with an average of 3.39 yards after contact, and ahead of a few notable backs like Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Josh Jacobs. And the Browns' offensive line hasn't been great this year, and I really like the future of Judkins in Cleveland. Harold Fannin has also played really well and is 5th in the 2025 class in receiving yards with over 500 yards in his first 12 games. Tight ends typically take longer to develop as they have to both block at the NFL level and of course run routes at the NFL level, and Harold Fannin has been tremendous for a 3rd round rookie tight end. And when we discuss prospects in the 2026 NFL draft process, you'll hear me emphasize that teams need to simply draft good football players or floor-raising players, and that's exactly what the Browns did in the 2025 draft. And this is a conversation for another video, but there are Browns fans out there at the moment who want to keep GM Andrew Berry and move on from Kevin Stefanski due in large part to this draft. They also selected Dylan Gabriel, running back Dylan Sampson, and of course Shedeur Sanders, and I don't think Gabriel or Sanders will be the guy in Cleveland for the long haul, but I do love the idea of Dylan Sampson being a legit RB2 for the next few years. And today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks and my code GFB. Unfortunately, we went 0 of 3 a couple of weeks ago, and when you are choosing more or less on yards for a player, I would argue going 0 of 3 is as impressive as going 3 for 3 because you went 100% on your picks, just in the wrong direction. But anyways, we are looking to get back on track in week 14, and today's video is sponsored by the season-long partner of the channel, PrizePicks. And with our Week 14 lineup, we're keeping it simple. Every game from here on out is a playoff game for the Bengals, so we're taking Joe Burrow more than 255.5 passing yards. Adonai Mitchell's target share has increased significantly over the past few weeks, including a 12-target game in Week 13, and that's why we're taking Adonai Mitchell more than 46.5 receiving yards. JJ McCarthy has obviously well, stunk in 2025, and I wouldn't be upset at all if this play didn't cash because he had a good game, but we are taking JJ McCarthy lower than 190.5 passing yards. Always play responsibly, and when you make your first $5 deposit on PrizePicks using code GFB, PrizePicks will give you $50 in lineups instantly, and it'd be a real shame if the JJ McCarthy play didn't cash because, again, I wouldn't be upset at all if he had a great game and finally looked like a first-round pick, but again, when you make your first $5 deposit on PrizePicks using code GFB, they will give you $50 in lineups instantly. Always play responsibly, and a big thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. The Las Vegas Raiders are in today's video for a couple of reasons, and out of the teams that we discussed that have had bad classes so far, I think they have the best chance to turn it around. And for transparency, whenever we did the initial draft grades video, I gave the Raiders a B+. I had some concern and questions with how they handled the middle part of the draft specifically, and we are seeing that 8 months later, but why I think they have a chance to really turn it around is right now Jack Besh has 10 receptions for 114 receiving yards in the year, and Jack Besh to me was a pretty straightforward evaluation. He was a top 50 prospect for me. I had him actually at player number 50 exactly, and I thought this was a player that could come in and be a 600 to 800 yard type year player. And this isn't me refusing to acknowledge that I was wrong on a prospect, because I have been wrong on countless prospects before and will continue to be wrong in the future, but this is a player that is simply not played. I mean, he'll get 1 target a game outside of the Indy game where he actually had 5 targets. He'll get his 1 target a game and then he'll be benched. And there is a clear disconnection between Pete Carroll and John Spytek, and I do think in some ways that Jakobi Meyers, aside from it being a lost season for the Raiders and the fact that they probably acknowledged internally that they were not going to bring Jakobi Meyers back, that John Spytek wanted to trade him so that his guys could play because they spent 2 selections at the receiver position within the first 4 rounds. Obviously Jack Besh and receiver Dante Thornton, but there's this disconnection between Pete Carroll and John Spytek where Pete Carroll will say something to the effect of, you know, we really want to see these rookies show that they want to have it in practice, or something along those lines, that they need to show they want to play, as if the rest of the team isn't showing that they're already not good. I mean, they are 2-10 for a reason, and there's a reason that one of their 2 wins was against the Tennessee Titans, who have a very real chance to go back-to-back number 1 overall picks, and the other win was, funnily enough, against the Patriots back in week 1, which was obviously an outlier game based on where each team is at this point in the year. But also within this, I feel really bad for the fans, because it's one thing to be a bad team or to have a losing record or a very big losing record like the Raiders and ultimately the Browns have, but at least with Cleveland, you can convince yourself heading into the week or really start to believe, hey man, Quinshon Judkins is playing good. Carson Schlesinger will probably be the defensive rookie of the year. I can look forward to watching my guys play, but there's a refusal outside of Ashton Jeanty to even play the rookies, and that's extremely frustrating because, like we mentioned, it's not like the Raiders are killing it to the point where, hey, we don't have to play our rookies because we are doing so good to begin with. In fact, it's near the exact opposite. Third-round corner Darian Porter has played less than 300 defensive snaps, and they're playing Caillou Blue Kelly over him right now, and it's not like Caillou Blue Kelly is a prime Richard Sherman by any means, and right now he actually has a season passer rating when targeted of over 100 when quarterbacks throw Caillou Blue Kelly's way. So with the Raiders being at 2-10, I have no idea why Jack Besh isn't getting more targets. I have no idea why Darian Porter isn't a starter every single week to at least see what you have for 2026 and beyond. And for that matter too, I don't know why Dante Thornton isn't on the field either when he's shown at times that he's capable of making big plays. And my frustration with the Raiders is the disconnect between Pete Carroll, the team, and John Spytek. And like we prefaced with this, I think out of any team that has a chance to turn it around with their draft class, I do think it is the Raiders, but this is undoubtedly an extremely frustrating situation that in a lot of ways is preventable. Now, we did not discuss Ashton Jeanty throughout that portion of the Raiders draft, but the reality is, to me, if he can produce an 11 or 1,200 total yard year along with double-digit touchdowns as a rookie in what is undoubtedly a very, very bad situation for him to personally succeed in, then whenever he has a competent coaching staff around him and a competent game plan every week next year, then I think he will be fine. And maybe this is a hot take based on how his rookie year's played out, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes the Pro Bowl next year. Now, one team that has had had a really good draft, which would be an understatement through the first 13 or 14 weeks of the 25 season, is the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks did a really good job on draft weekend of simply what I like to call acquiring better football players and raising the floor of this team, and it really started with the selection of Gray Zabel, an offensive lineman from North Dakota State, who has done a really good job playing left guard for the Seahawks, because if you know anything about the 2024 Seahawks, their interior offensive line was a mess, and Gray Zabel has done a really good job playing next to Charles Cross, and at the time of this video release has allowed a grand total of 0 sacks in his rookie season, which is obviously very impressive. They also selected Nick Emanwari in the second round, and Emanwari was a prospect I liked a lot, but I also thought he was a player that was a kind of hyper-specific player, where if he went to a team that didn't have a game plan for him or a clear role in a system, then he could very easily be viewed as a draft bust. But obviously, whenever we found out that he was going to Mike McDonald and going to the Seattle Seahawks, the worry that I had about him going to a bad landing spot instantly vanished, and I thought that he was going to be a really good player, and we've seen that when Emanwari is on the field, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes a Pro Bowl at some point in his career. Elijah Arroyo is a rookie tight end, and whenever he's gotten the ball, he's flashed, but the reality is, for any rookie tight end, if you produce anything more than 500 or 600 yards, at least in your rookie season, to me, that is a home run of a draft pick, and I think with the flashes we've seen with Elijah Arroyo whenever he gets the football, that there is going to be something there in the long run. But right now, at least from a statistical impact, the impact has not been very good, but that kind of also is going to happen when Jackson Smith-Njigba is having the year that he's having. And another player, speaking of receiver, was what I thought was another good football player. I had Torrey Horton inside my top 100. They selected him at pick 166, and you've seen that Torrey Horton has 5 receiving touchdowns on the year and has been a really good player for a day 3 selection, and I think that there is a reality that he is a legit Robin to Jackson Smith-Njigba's Batman, and throughout the course of his rookie contract and over the next few years, I think there's a very real scenario where Torrey Horton has a 700 or 800 yard year along with 7 to 9 touchdowns. And obviously, when you think of the 2025 Seattle Seahawks, you probably think of Sam Darnold, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Mike McDonald, maybe even Clint Kubiak, but the impact that the rookies have had has been substantial, and there is a reason that the Seahawks will be playing meaningful football in January, and that I don't think anybody would be surprised if they go to the NFC Championship game. The Carolina Panthers are up, and if you guys are not aware, we do a draft grade video for every NFL team immediately following each draft, and it's one of my favorite videos of the entire year. It's several months of hard work, culminating into one 3-day weekend, and the video is released a few hours after each draft. And the reason I bring this up is the Panthers were one of 3 teams I gave an A+ draft grade to back in April, and 8 months later, I think that grade holds up. I absolutely love this class from top to bottom, and it of course started with Teteroa McMillan, and all throughout the pre-draft process, I couldn't believe how overthought he was as a prospect, and there was a point where people were talking about McMillan falling to the late teens and even the early 20s, and when the Panthers took him at number 8 overall, I clapped my hands and said out loud, yes, because of how excited I was with this pick. And even in the second round, Nick Scorton was another player that I thought was also overthought, and at the time of this video release, Scorton is tied for 5th amongst rookies in pressures, and given that he is only 21 years old, well, I think he will only get better as time goes on. Princely Umanmielen has played sparingly so far, but I do think he will be an eventual replacement for DJ Wonnum, and even in the worst case, which I don't think will happen, but even in the worst case, he's still a solid depth rusher as a 3rd round pick. They also had a really good pick on day 3 as they selected safety Lathan Ransom in the 4th round, and Lathan Ransom has been getting more snaps as the season goes on, and most recently had a season-high 11 tackles against the Rams, including a sack, and played a big part in the Panthers pulling off the improbable victory. But with Teteroa McMillan as the prize of this class, well, he's a player that could very easily be an 1,100-yard rookie, as he already has 826 yards in 13 games, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he finishes the year with 11 or even 1,200 yards. And I am a firm believer that if he is having this type of success at 22 years old and showcasing an impressive ability to run routes, especially for how big of a receiver that he is, well, I know this may surprise you here, but I do think he will be a 1,000-yard receiver for several years. Hell, probably close to the next decade if he stays healthy, and I don't throw that word around often because of how fast things change in the NFL. But with McMillan, the 2 pass rushers in Scourton and Uman Mielen, as well as a promising safety in Lathan Ransom, it's not a coincidence the Panthers are in contention for the NFC South right now. They also selected tight end Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame, who quietly has 2 receiving touchdowns on the year, and I'm not saying this was a huge hit by any means, but getting 138 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns out of a rookie day 3 tight end certainly is solid production for where he was drafted. And one of the big things about the 2025 NFL draft, at least leading up to it, was you heard people talking about this class and refer to it as a meat and potatoes draft. And what they meant by this was that there would be a lot of solid players within this class, but probably no true generational players. Think 2021 with Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, Micah Parsons, and Pat Surtain, among others for reference. And nearly 8 months after the 2025 draft, we are seeing how good some teams are at evaluating talent, or in some cases, how bad teams are at evaluating talent. And the Panthers drafted not just one, but several high-floor players within the 2025 draft, and you're seeing the results pay off in real time. I loved what they did back in April, and there was a reason they were just one of 3 teams to receive an A+ draft grade. The New England Patriots are in today's video for a couple of reasons, and obviously whenever you think of the 2025 Patriots, you rightfully think of Drake May and Mike Vrabel. And Drake May is an MVP candidate and looks to be the future of this franchise for, honestly, 10 to 15 years if he stays healthy. That's it. He is already a top 5 quarterback. He is incredible, and he is just, there's nothing that I can say about Drake May that you already don't know. But pertaining to the 2025 Patriots draft class and why they belong in today's video, takes us back to last year when this team lost in Arizona to the Cardinals. That was a very, very ugly game. There was a point in that game where the Patriots had the ball inside the Cardinals' 5-yard line, and Alex Van Pelt was the team's offensive coordinator, and there was a sequence where the Patriots ran the ball inside the 5-yard line. They asked then head coach Jerod Mayo after the game about whether or not he would have liked to have seen Drake May run the football, obviously because Drake May is a dual-threat quarterback, and he can make things happen along the offensive line that, say, somebody like Tom Brady obviously couldn't. And Jerod Mayo answered the question by saying, "You said it, not me," and there was a lot of dysfunction within the organization. The Patriots' offensive line was also very, very bad in 2024, and Drake May was set up for failure. We have covered this in depth throughout the 2024-2025 offseason, and obviously with the success the Patriots are having this year, well, you see it firsthand, what an offensive line can do, what a good offensive coordinator can do, and of course, what a good head coach in Mike Vrabel can do. And with the first selection of the Mike Vrabel era, they selected Will Campbell, an offensive lineman from LSU. Now, unfortunately, right now, Will Campbell is hurt, but when he's played in 2025, well, I think it's very fair to say that he is this franchise left tackle of the future. They also selected running back TreVeyon Henderson in the 2nd round, and if I do have one thing to complain about the 2025 Patriots class, it's that TreVeyon Henderson is not used as much, though as we've gotten more towards the end of the 2025 regular season, TreVeyon Henderson has been used more, so it's finally good to see him start to play regularly and for him to get more touches, because the biggest thing with TreVeyon Henderson was simply get him the football. And then there was even a point around the trade deadline this year of, hey, the Patriots might be in the discussions for a running back, and everybody, myself included, was kind of saying, you already have a good running back on your roster, just simply give him the rock and let him play. But now that we are past that, the TreVeyon selection looks really good. They also selected deep threat Kyle Williams in the 3rd round with the 69th overall pick, and when Williams has received the football and when he's had the opportunity to make plays, he's been a nice addition to the team. And of course, the same applies to Jared Wilson, an offensive lineman from Georgia that they selected at the end of the 3rd round, and there's been a couple of welcome to the NFL moments for Jared Wilson, sure, which I think should be expected for a late 3rd round pick, but to receive 3 starters along the offense in Will Campbell, TreVeyon Henderson, and Jared Wilson, potentially a 4th in Kyle Williams, that's obviously a really good class for the Patriots. And there is also a player that Patriots fans are probably wondering why I haven't bring him up yet, and this is a player that is by every definition an unsung hero and a guy that the national media has not discussed anywhere close to as much as they should, and that is defensive back Craig Woodson from Cal. This is a Swiss Army knife by every definition, and in some ways, he kind of reminds me of Patrick Chung, or at least the modern day of Patrick Chung. based on the usage, whether they line him up at single high, whether they bring him down in the box. He is all over the field, and Craig Woodson is a guy that is going to be in New England for, honestly, as long as he wants to be, based on the level that he's playing right now, because Craig Woodson is a player that will probably make every single all-rookie first team, as he should, but because he doesn't have, 6 or 7 interceptions or 4 or 5 forced fumbles, and the fact that they have an MVP quarterback and a Coach of the Year candidate in Mike Vrabel, and a coach that probably will win the Coach of the Year in Mike Vrabel, because this team is going to go from the 4th overall pick to maybe the number 1 seed in the conference. Well, somebody like Craig Woodson unfortunately flies under the radar, but he too is an insane player and one of the best rookies that we've seen so far in the 2025 regular season, and there's a reason the Patriots are 11-2 at the time of this video release, and it's due in some part to how good the rookie class for them has played in 2025. Now, I wasn't going to include this team in today's video, but they definitely deserve a spot, and the reason I wasn't going to include them is because we're going to be doing a video breaking down their entire situation in a couple of days, so we'll have to resurface the 25 draft in a couple of days, but it's the Minnesota Vikings, and there is almost nothing this team loves to do more, and General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah loves to do more, than light picks on fire after the first round, and this draft is a prime example of that. Now, the one positive that the Vikings have within their 2025 draft class is guard Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson is a player that looks to be able to start for this team for not just a year or two, but really the next 3, 4, 5 years, and as long as he continues to play at the level he is, and then whenever you think of a player that's already having a good rookie season, naturally you are going to project that player to improve over the course of their career. I mean, that's kind of how the trajectory of a career goes, but after that there is almost zero production from this draft class. They selected receiver Ty Felton at the end of the 3rd round, and right now Ty Felton is a gunner on special teams, and whenever you select a player in the 3rd round, obviously you want some sort of contribution as a rookie, and I will say, at least in somewhat fairness to Ty Felton here, that even if he was a really good 3rd round rookie, based on the level of quarterback play that the Vikings have had in 2025, his production would be limited, but it's the fact that he's at minimum a wide receiver 4 on this team, behind, of course, Jefferson, Addison, and Jalen Naylor, which was already a questionable move to begin with, and I also thought it was a questionable pick to begin with because there were 2 very clear receivers that I liked on the board a lot more than I liked Ty Felton, and for reference, I didn't have Ty Felton inside my top 140, but I really liked Alec Iomanner, who went to the Titans on day 3, and Torrey Horton, who went to the Seahawks on day 3, both players that I had in my top 100 that the Vikings passed on for a, again, special teams gunner. They selected Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins in the 5th round, and whenever you are selecting in the 5th round, it's obviously not fair to hold Ingram-Dawkins to the level of play that should be expected from a 1st or 2nd round player, and then they had 2 selections after the pick 200 mark, which, again, if we are being completely honest, there should not be really anything expected from either of those players in their rookie year, and that was linebacker Kobe King, who, by the way, is no longer on the roster as he's on the Jets at the moment, and tight end Gavin Bartholomew, who is on the physically unable to perform list, and when you look at this team's game plan with the 2025 draft from the start of bringing Donovan Jackson, great, that's a good pick. You needed to improve the interior offensive line, but after that, it was bad, and there's a reason the Vikings are 4-8, and it's because they have next to 0 depth on the roster, and it's because not just when you have one bad year of drafting, but several bad years of drafting, that's where you get to where they are now. And again, we are going to break all of this down within the Vikings-specific video that's going to come out in a couple of days, but with how bad this draft class has been, I really felt that they deserved a spot in today's video. Right now, there are a couple of other big winners and losers from the 25 draft so far on the screen, but I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe as we are closing in on 225,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you enough for the support. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.